Yes, guys. So we are live for episode number 4 of the Mindset Tune-Up Show. And it's a real privilege tonight to have this lady on. I've known her now coming up to 5 months. And as I've stated in a lot of my posts on social, Christine's made an unbelievable impact in my life. And I think that's, before I bring Christine in, I kind of just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more on that, which is Christine came across me through a gentleman called Kev from Brevolution, which a lot of people will be aware of as well, and then reached out to myself to talk about mindset and self-development coaching. And after an initial conversation with Christine, I left her with some tasks to do, and that's how I work as a coach. I'll have an initial conversation, and then I'll give people tasks to go away with, to reflect on, to take some perspective of, and then if they feel it's been significant for them or they feel this is right, they'll come back to me, we have another conversation, and we can take it forward from there. And I think that, again, I never know how someone's going to take them. I never know if someone's going to contact me back and come back to me. But it's something that I developed as a coach that was important for me. I think it shows accountability of the person to then go away and straight off the back make some big moves and some bold steps to take these tasks on, and then approach me back to say, yeah, this is something I'm committed to, because commitment's a big thing. And thankfully, Christine did come back to me, and we've had an unbelievable months that have kind of like followed from that initial call. And Christine's made some unbelievable progress, and I'm privileged and proud of the progress Christine's made, but also the impact she's made on me in terms of knowing Christine's story and to know how empowering she is as a female, as a mother, and as a daughter. And I think that I've taken a lot. I take a lot from my clients. I take a lot from people. Perspective's a massive thing for me. And it really humbles me and makes me feel grateful to be here and for the things that I've got. And the main reason I wanted Christine on the show tonight is not to talk about the journey that me and Christine have been on over the last few months, where she's really kind of worked on herself in terms of aspirations and finding some real purpose for herself and light in life for her, but more so the journey up to the point she met myself, because some of the things Christine has been through in life have been pretty horrific, and she's stood so strong to that. And the mother in Christine is absolutely outstanding, and she's going to kind of be very open and honest and talk about a story today, which I think shows tremendous courage for someone to speak as open and honest as Christine does. Again, I work with a lot of people who don't want me to share their stories in confidentiality. Is a massive thing for me, and I never would. But for Christine to step up for the want of helping others, and that's, I feel, it's a beautiful thing when someone is happy to share their story because they feel it can impact and help other people. And I feel that's just a real beautiful thing in someone to be able to do, because that's obviously going to help more people. To whether they become aware, they just see someone else's circumstance and it helps them take a different perspective. It's really powerful. So I'm going to bring Christine in. Obviously, Christine's a little bit nervous, but I expressed to Christine, I'm nervous every time I switch on the Mac and come live to do the show. I still get nerves massively, considering how much I put myself in front of the camera. So I'm going to bring Christine in now. I'm going to just have a general chat tonight, but I really want to highlight what a powerful lady Christine is. And hopefully once you hear the story, but also see how strong she's standing today, and to hear more about a beautiful daughter, Evie. I'm sure you guys are going to take a lot away from this show. So I'm really excited. I'm proud to have Christine on. So I'm going to bring Christine in now. Hello, Christine. How are we doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So just to ease us in, I just want to talk about the opportunity that you helped us with today, which was to let us be able to go down and speak to a charity that's very close to your heart, just with the opportunity to express some of the work that we've done together. And I felt very blessed to be able to go down and speak to Ruben's retreat and the people involved. And as we talk through this chat tonight, people become aware of why that's so close to your heart. But I think that where we went today kind of really helped me understand that one thing that we both have in alignment is really trying to help and impact people in life. And that became apparent through the conversations we started to have together, in terms of you wanting to share a lot about your journey that you've kind of been on. And obviously you're very open and honest about that as well. So again, I just want to kind of talk about your relationship with Rubens and how that's formed, because I think that's quite significant, just to help people understand that, if that's okay with yourself, Christy.
Yeah, that's fine. So, so 8 years ago, I had my gorgeous little girl, Evie, and she was born healthy and everything, and no problems at all there. When she got to the age of about 9 months old, well, before that, actually, I'd noticed that she wasn't developing the same as other babies. You know, just from going to baby groups, and I used to be a teacher as well, so I kind of have got a bit of the background knowledge of child development and stuff. So I knew she wasn't developing the same as other babies of her age. So I asked the health visitor to come and do an assessment on her. And on that same day, she had her first epileptic seizure. I didn't know she had epilepsy at the time, but yeah, it was very scary. It lasted 2 hours, horrific. She was in resource in A&E in Stepping Hill, just awful. So then we were kind of fast-tracked through the system and discovered that, yes, she did have epilepsy. She had to have an EEG test that looked at the brain pattern, the patterns in the brain. And that showed us that she had generalised epilepsy, which was all over her brain. And then after that, she continued having these really prolonged seizures. So up until her second birthday, she had 8 more really prolonged seizures, like 2 hours long. And each time we'd be ambulanced and into resource at Stepping Hill, and like 8 doctors around her, just horrific. No parent ever wants to see their child going through that, and it was just awful. Anyway, unfortunately, about 11 days before her second birthday, she had a massive seizure, the biggest one that myself and her dad had ever seen. Thankfully, her consultant at the time was on duty that night, and she was just amazing. But again, we went through the same process, a couple of hours long, but this time they couldn't stop the seizure, so they had to intubate her. So basically put her in a coma, an induced coma. And because our local hospital doesn't have a intensive care ward for children, we had to be transferred to Manchester. So then she spent a week and a half on intensive care in Manchester, and when she got brought round from her coma, she had just completely regressed. She was like a different child. She couldn't sit up, she couldn't talk, she was beginning to walk and things prior to the seizure. So we spent, it was horrific, like she just used to cry constantly because she was scared, you know, she was only 2. She didn't really know who myself or her dad were either, which was awful as a parent for your child not to recognise you. We spent nearly 6 months in the children's hospital. She underwent hundreds of tests, all of which came back normal, which was just crazy because we were like, this is just not normal. What's going on? She was so different compared to how she was. And they couldn't discover anything that was wrong with her. They tested her for all the really rare conditions and things. It did come back, one of the tests did come back showing that she did have a very rare condition, and she is currently the only child in the world with this particular condition that she's got, but it doesn't explain the rest of the things that are wrong with her. So she's lost over half of her brain, which they can't explain what that is or what's caused that. So we were basically told in the hospital that her brain would continue to die and that we would probably only have a few months with her. So at that point she was 2. So we were told to just go home and make memories with her, basically, which, you know, just awful. Anyway, we discovered Evie's dad he used to work at a company called Stagecoach in Stockport, the bus company.
Yeah.
And he worked with, he was an accountant, and he worked with this other guy called Adam, who's one of the trustees at Rubens Retreat. Okay. So that's how we found out about Rubens. And basically Rubens Retreat are a charity that support families of children with life-shortening conditions and complex needs, but also families that have been bereaved of a child. So they support all of those families, which is amazing. And at that point, we didn't know anybody else that was going through what we were going through. So we had the opportunity to go and have a weekend break at Reuben's, which is in Glossop, which is just a beautiful place anyway. And it was, the whole weekend was just amazing. Having been through all that trauma in the hospital and not knowing what the future held, just going away from your home and the hospital for a weekend in the hills and the lovely countryside was just amazing. And having that time with Evie away from all the beeps of the hospital monitors and stuff like that was just lovely. And then we just continue to keep in contact with them, and they provide like therapy days, animal therapy days, music therapy, just lovely kind of memory making days that you can have with your child, and also meet with other families as well that are going through similar things, which, you know, is just a godsend really, because it's such a lonely place to be in when you're in that position. So it's horrible that other families are going through it, but to have that support network is just amazing really. So yeah, that's how we became in contact with Reuben's. And I also do volunteer work for them now, just to kind of give a bit back to them for everything that they've done for us, because yeah, I just can't thank them enough really. They've been such a massive support for us.
Well, I definitely saw that today. I felt the you were like a family, all the staff, and the way they embraced you and spoke to yourself, and being shown around the place. I was kind of blown away by the little details they go into, and everything they're kind of put together there. And I'm going to bring it back into Reuben's a little bit later. But I just want to pull it back into some of the story you just talked about there, because it was quite, again, it's hard to hear, let alone live through, Christine. Do you know what I mean? And I think that just hearing you speak then and kind of talk through everything, obviously, that Evie went through, but especially the unknown scenario, that there was just, they weren't clear on what it was. In terms of your, just to kind of, before, to kind of like break it down a little bit, and because I want to talk kind of about mindset, up until Evie, where kind of was your mindset in terms of how you were kind of functioning day to day, in terms of a strong mind? Did you have other things kind of going on? Obviously, I know there's other things we're going to bring in now, but I think that where I want to get to with this is how much of an impact that kind of mentally had on you, whether you were kind of, I don't think you could ever be prepared for that, but were there things that kind of held strength during that time, or things that kind of potentially made things worse in a way, in terms of you handling emotional and mental stress, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
So kind of leading up to having Evie, obviously there's been other circumstances as well that you're happy to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so before having Evie, I'd always say that I was quite an anxious person. So I've always had problems with anxiety and not a great self-image really. Been in a few prior to Evie, been in a few kind of negative relationships and things like that, which haven't had a great impact on my self-esteem and stuff like that. And yeah, just general kind of anxiety and struggles with that. And then so I would say when I had Evie, and with all the problems that we had prior to her big seizure, with worrying about her development and stuff like that, because I'm an anxious person, it was heightened massively. Just feeling anxious constantly. I think any parent does about their child. Yeah. But when you already struggle with anxiety, it's tenfold really.
Yeah.
But I would say that the main thing that gave me like the strength through it all is just my love for Evie. She's just amazing, and any parent would say that about their child. You just don't know love properly, I don't think, not that kind of love, till you have a child. And the love that I feel for her, I just can't can't explain it fully. It's just so strong, you know. I just love her with every inch of myself, and that, I would say, is what keeps me going and gives me the strength to get through the different things. And I'd not known that before I had her, really. Obviously, you know, different kinds of love with your family and your friends, and if you're in a relationship and things like that. But it was nothing compared to the love that, you know, that you have for your child, really. So yeah, I would say that that's what's given me the strength to keep going through circumstances. But the anxiety was something that I have really struggled with.
Yeah, because I think I completely agree with you in terms of when I had Jax last year. I think that I've never, like, say, known a love like that. Is a different type of love than a love for your partner, or you kind of like even a love for your parents in a weird way. Because they obviously love you like you love your child, but it's kind of it's so strong, it's untrue. And I think, like you say, the love was the strongest point of you staying in control and handling these situations the best you can. In terms of you talking about anxiety and things like that, but where did it take it in the line of dealing with kind of the situations within the hospital, the not knowing, just that whole journey, especially in the early stages of the seizures and her going into hospital and things like that, and there sounds to be so much uncertainty around it. Like, what were your coping mechanisms at that point, or was it literally just the fact that I love my daughter the world over and I just need to be here for her? Like, where was your struggles pushed away because you were focusing so much on Evie?
So yeah, the love, obviously, that was a coping mechanism. But I'm so lucky. I've got the most amazing family and friends, and myself and Evie's dad were together at that point as well. So we were very supportive of each other during that time. But we both of us, like, we have just the most amazing family and friends. We really do. And without their support and love and care and just things like bringing us food, because you forget to eat in that situation. But then if you don't eat, you've not got the energy to stay up all night with your child. So, you know, little things like that, or text messages or phone calls just saying, we love you, keep going, you know, you're doing amazing. Things like that, that support network around you, I found a massive help. And I honestly don't know if I could have got through it without that. You know, I just feel very, very lucky that I've got that. I don't have hundreds and hundreds of friends, but the friends that I have got are the best friends that I could ever wish for. You know, they're just amazing. And they all know who they are. They're just brilliant, brilliant people. So yeah, I would say definitely the love for Evie, but also having that support network was a massive thing for me.
That's amazing. And I think, like you say, it's those friends will definitely know who they are, and I think that's a beautiful thing as well. In terms of, obviously, when it came to the point where Evie came away from the hospital and you start to become her main carer, obviously with your ex-husband, where did that send you mentally? Because I think that sounds intimidating alone, just saying that, like, Evie's going to come out of hospital, she still needs full-time care. Kind of, where did your mind and thought processes go there? Were you supported a lot during that process? Was there a structure to it? Or is this things that you've really had to kind of pick up and understand yourself from very quickly? To the point now where, obviously, when I've been in contact with yourself, you sound so you know absolutely everything you need to do. And if anything, you are the main person that should be around Evie unless you had to go to the hospital. There's other people that are a little bit wary at times if she becomes ill, but you're the confident one in terms of knowing exactly what to do, being a mother, and that's an amazing thing. Until the point she would need to go into hospital. So if we took it back to the point they kind of said, okay, Evie can come home, where did you start to go with your thought processes at that point?
Honestly, I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go home. I had the security of the hospital. We had the most amazing nursing team, doctors, everything. They literally had to force me to go home. I didn't want to go. but they were like, you can't, you know, if Evie hasn't got long, you can't spend her life in hospital. That's not right. You know, she needs to be out there. She needs to be doing things that you want to do with her. So what that we did it in kind of a transition phase. So we had a few visits back home because obviously I had to change my whole house round. Because prior to going into hospital, we didn't have a wheelchair, obviously, because Evie didn't need one. Didn't have any of the equipment that she needed. We had to turn our living room into a bedroom for Evie. And she had to have a hospital style bed and hoists and things to lift her up, and everything just had to be changed. So we did it in a transition phase. So we did a few visits home, got Evie used to being back home again and not being in hospital. At the point where we went home, she was a lot more settled in terms of on her medications. They were all at the right times for her and stuff like that. So her kind of general well-being in that sense was more settled. She wasn't upset anymore and agitated. She was a lot calmer. But I had to learn how to tube feed. So prior to her seizure, she was eating like a child of her age would. But then now she can't because her swallow isn't strong enough. So I had to learn how to set up feeds which go into her stomach. I had to learn how to give medicines and the right doses to give and how to administer them through her stomach. I had to learn how to, she can't manage her own saliva and things like that. So when she gets a cold and stuff, it's quite serious for her. So I had to learn this technique called suctioning, where you basically have to kind of blow her nose for her and make her cough and things like that. But it's quite a specialised kind of procedure, so I had to learn how to do that. So there's a lot of stuff that myself and her dad had to learn how to do, which was completely alien to us and very scary. And I got the hospital staff to check that I was doing it right about 100 times before we left the hospital. Because I just wasn't confident enough. I felt like, oh God, we're leaving like the security of the hospital and I've got to go home and make sure my child is safe.
And obviously, just to kind of ask a couple of questions, when you say obviously you and your ex had to learn these things, were you shown, like, did the hospital obviously show you? Yeah, so they were helping you understand all of these things to obviously help you there. You weren't kind of trying to learn from from trying to, however you found to learn. It was shown from the hospital to yourself to then go, and that was the fearful factor of, right, can I now do this?
Yeah, without them watching over me, like. But yeah, when we got home, we had a specialist team of nurses as well from Evie's current respite place, and they used to come and do home visits and check up on us. And I asked them to come every day at first just to make sure we were okay. But as we just kind of got in the routine of it and you practice it and you get used to it, those visits kind of lessened and I felt more confident in it. But there's always new stuff that goes on with Evie. She's very unpredictable. She likes to keep me on my toes a lot. So yeah, there's always new things that I need to learn, but I do feel from where we were like 6 years ago, the confidence has definitely grown. And a few of the doctors, whenever we do go in hospital now, which thankfully, touch wood, is quite rare, the doctors do say to me now, like, well, you know, you could be a doctor or a nurse, the amount of medical knowledge you've got. So yeah, you just learn, and I'm part of an amazing community that sadly of other families that have got children similar to Evie. And I learn from them. You know, there's some children that are a lot more complex than Evie, sadly, and I learn a lot of skills and knowledge from them as well. We have good chats and have a laugh, because you have to have a laugh about stuff to keep yourself sane and keep going. And they're very inspirational to me as well. So yeah, it's just time and practice and getting in your routine. And I'm very much a routine person. So once I've got like a routine set, I feel a bit more secure about things.
Yeah. And so in terms of, you come out of hospital with Evie and you've learned all these things of how to take care of Evie, and she's still been labelled as this short life expectancy. and at that point they were telling you it was very short.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to kind of gain belief and confidence that actually Evie's stabilizing, or Evie's not going anywhere? Do you know what I mean? To be so far along now, was there a point where that belief grew away from what you were potentially getting told? And then I appreciate that from the doctor's point of view, it was such an unknown, and they were making the best guess possible. And so it's not going against doctors here, but I am saying, was there just a point where you start to think against that and think, well, actually, this is, Evie might not be going anywhere?
It probably took me a good year, I'd say, because when we left the hospital, they did say like Evie could possibly pass away in her sleep. So I refused to leave the hospital without a saturations monitor, which monitors like her oxygen and her heart rate, because I just said to them, I will not sleep if this is what you're telling me, because I don't want her to be on her own. So they gave me this saturations monitor so that I could hear if anything was going on, basically, but I didn't have to be in the same room as her. But yeah, I'd say it probably took me a year because I wouldn't leave her. I would never leave her. Of fear of something happening and me not being there. So I didn't really want to go out. I didn't really want to see my friends without Evie being there, because I was so scared of something happening to her and me not being there. I wanted to be there with her at all times and her know that I was there. So yeah, probably a year of getting used to our new life and our new Evie, and meeting other families that were going through it and chatting with them and gaining strength and confidence through them as well. And knowing that, like, it got to a year and I thought, my God, like we're a year on. The doctor said she was only going to be here for a few months, and she's still here. And at that point, you know, she'd come so far. She'd come from virtually being blind and not being able to see anything to tracking lights and recognising me and recognising her dad and people that loved her, and starting school, which was bloody amazing because we never thought we'd get that. And she had her first day at school. So I think when we'd got these milestones out of the way, like we'd made this bucket list of tiny, like probably insignificant things to other people, but things that we'd not done with her that we wanted to do, like the Sea Life Centre at the Trafford Centre, you know, silly little things like that. But we thought we only had a few months, so we were like, right, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. So, and we'd got to like after a year, and we ticked off half the things, and we were like, oh my God, like we've done so much already, and you know, we're going to need to do another bucket list soon. And I think when you get to those milestones, like I just thought, wow, you know, she is. I looked at her and she just, I mean, you've met Evie. She smiles and laughs constantly. She's such a happy little girl, and I look at her face and I see the strength and determination that she's got, and that's what makes me think, well, you know, you're keeping going, you're still here. Why should I be thinking negatively and thinking that, you know, something's going to happen? I need to be inspired by you.
Wow.
And she does. She inspires me every day because she's so strong. Like, she'll go for blood tests, she'll go for cannulas if she's been poorly. She won't flinch when the doctors put needles in her. She's like, come on, next one. She's just not bothered at all. She's so strong. Whereas me, somebody puts a needle in me, I'm like, oh, you know, it's she's just unbelievable. So if she can keep going and keep doing stuff like that, then I can't just sit here and wallow. I have to keep going with her and keep her as happy and as strong as possible. And you know, we're at 8 years. Well, she's 8 now, and she was 2 back then.
Yeah.
So.
And I feel like to hear you say that in terms of how strong Evie is, and for her to be fighting and smiling, she's got an unbelievably beautiful and infectious smile. And what was beautiful as well is, like you say, that recognition. So when I met Evie and she saw you, the smile was, and you could just feel the energy and happiness from her. And I think that's an amazing thing. But for then you to like say, like, Evie's fighting on here and staying strong and being happy, and then you take that perspective into your own life, and that's how then lead you. And I think that's an amazing strength that you found from that, where a lot of people may struggle to see. And that's, again, a main reason why I wanted you on tonight, to help people see some of the things that you've taken empowerment from. And I think that, like you say, I think coming away from a hospital and having so much fear, because the amount of trust you place into the doctors that literally know what they're doing, which they do, and how well they were looked after, that you are literally that sole carer now, unless you've got obviously people coming in and supporting yourself. What do you think? Obviously, I've known and worked with you now for a fair few months, but in the first years, or the years that kind of came to pass, in terms of your coping mechanisms, where did they lie? Were you struggling to cope, or do you feel you were coping well? What was your kind of, do you know what I mean? Where were you in this position then? Where did you go?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was struggling, and I still struggle now, because no parent should ever have to face the fact that you could lose your child. And I don't know when that might happen. None of us know when things might happen like that. But obviously, I've been given this, prognosis for Evie. So it is a struggle. It's a thought that is constantly in my mind, but it's now towards the back of my mind, whereas before it was right at the front. So anytime she becomes poorly, it comes right back to the front again. But I keep it to the back of my mind as much as possible. And coping mechanisms, just talking really, and being in the support networks that I'm in has made a massive difference. The charities, honestly, without charities, I don't know where we would be. All the support, or the majority of the support that we get is through charities, particularly Reuben's Retreat, but other charities as well. And most of them are set up, sadly, from loss, or from difficult situations that other families have been through. But without them, I'm not sure where we'd be. During lockdown, Reuben's Retreat used to ring me pretty much weekly and check in and make sure I was all right. They used to drop off like food hampers and like little pamper sets for me, so that I could have some nice time as well as little presents for Evie. And and they do like Zoom calls, and so that Evie could see her other friends from Reuben's and stuff as well. So I think a support network for me is massive, and is a big help for me in how to deal with things. But I try and be as positive as possible. I do, because I want to be the best that I can be for Evie. But that doesn't mean that I don't have negative thoughts or struggles with it all. I just try and do it. I just try and have that time away from Evie and keep the positivity with her, really. And obviously, since working with yourself, journaling and writing stuff down has been a massive help to me, because I find that when I'm journaling, it's just getting the thoughts out of my head, whereas before I did that, they were just running around my head constantly. And even if it's just myself that sees my journal, which it is mainly, I've got those thoughts out of my head. So as I sleep better for that. So things like that are a massive help.
Because you touch on sleep there, but your sleep pattern, I remember when we were talking, and when we first started working together, and I was talking about lack of sleep, and then it became quite apparent the lack of sleep you had, because it was taking care of Evie and making sure she was okay. And that is obviously something that we've worked on in terms of ensuring you've got other times to rest and recover and have you time as well. But how's the adaptation of your time in terms of taking care of Evie evolved? And more specifically, potentially before we started working together, like how did that start to affect your kind of life as a whole? And again, how were you managing that at that point in time? Because obviously there was no work involved then, because your work became looking after Evie. Then there was the sleep pattern was broken up, wasn't it, in terms of making sure she was okay through the night and stuff like that. So in terms of, was that just a case of, I need to take this as it comes, or did you start to plan in terms of a bit of a strategy for you in your life at that point? How did you start to kind of work from your own perspective on this?
Yeah, it's difficult because Evie isn't a fan of sleep. Like she doesn't like sleep. She likes to stay awake and chat and laugh and have a party basically until like 2, 3 in the morning, and then she'll go off to sleep. But then she won't want to wake up in the morning either, which is quite hard. But yeah, I've just kind of, so I've gone from pre-Evie, loving my sleep, sleeping at 8, 9 hours a night, not, you know, having these amazing lions and stuff, to having a child where no new parent gets sleep anyway. You're just up all the time anyway. But I've not really had a night's sleep since having Evie, unless she goes to her dad's or respite and stuff like that. So yeah, pre working with yourself, I would just have to try and get sleep in between times when she was sleeping. And then thankfully myself and her dad, even though we're not together, he's a brilliant dad, and we have a great kind of way of working where we're very flexible. So if I have had a few nights where Evie hasn't slept great, he'll offer to have her, and things like that, and as well as the regular times that he has her as well. So and then she does go to an amazing respite place as well called Swanbourne Gardens in Edgeley, and unfortunately it was shut over lockdown, but it's just reopened again, so she has some overnight stays there as well, and she's obviously in school now as well, so I've got that time when she's there. So but I used to spend most of my time sleeping. I didn't really do anything else. Maybe like, well, I did socialise and things, like see my friends and things like that, but it was either seeing my friends or sleeping. So I wouldn't have, apart from the socialising aspect, I didn't really have much of a life in that sense, because I was just catching up on my sleep all the time. So yeah, so that's how I managed it really.
And before, because I think that leads nicely into obviously where you've got yourself to today in terms of you, and that's kind of something that we discussed today at Rubens. But I think that I just want to bring into play now, obviously another tragedy in terms of your brother that's happened to you in life as well. And obviously people that are tuning in now may have seen kind of the post that I've put up, but are you able to just to talk a little bit about David and kind of what went on there, as much as you're happy to talk about, just so that when we do discuss it, people have got a little bit of a background?
Yeah, that's fine. So David was 3 years younger than me, an amazing brother. Myself and my older brother Martin were all, and David, we were all really close. We used to go to gigs because we love our music. We used to go to gigs all the time. We used to have night outs, and just, and like our friends were all friends and stuff like that, when they all, like all my friends loved David and Martin, and vice versa with their friends. David always struggled with depression. He had depression for about 20 years. He tried to take his own life 3 times before. Sadly, a couple of times my mum and dad had found him, which was, really traumatic for them as well. And I would get called on quite a lot to go around and help support. There was a few times he'd self-harmed and stuff like that, and mum and dad just didn't know what to do, so I would be going over and trying to help. He did have a few stays in hospital in the mental health wards. My experience of those places aren't the best. They tend to group everybody together, and just, well, in my experience, put people on a lot of drugs to just knock them out, basically. It's not, for me, it wasn't a place of recovery for David, really. He got quite a lot of support though back when he was back in the community, not enough by any means, but he did get some counsellors that used to come out to him. He'd go through phases of being amazingly happy, social, meeting up with, he had an amazing group of friends, meeting up with his friends. He did a personal training course, really into his health and fitness. He used to help me quite a bit with running and stuff. He was really into that. He was actually into having cold showers. So he used to tell me about that all the time, and I used to think he was crazy. And whereas I wouldn't now, obviously.
No, you're doing
it. Time, I thought he was crazy. He used to do all the breathing stuff that Kev tells us to do, the fast breathing and get as much oxygen in as possible. He used to do all that and tell me to do it. I was like, not doing that. Anyway, yeah, he was amazing like that. He graduated just before, probably a couple of years, I think it was, before he passed away. He graduated from uni, from Salford Uni. He'd done a degree in psychology and counselling, and he'd become a counsellor to help people with mental health problems.
Wow.
He was the kindest person. He used to, so he lived in a flat in the centre of Manchester. There was a homeless guy that had spent a couple of nights in a tent near his flat, and he took him down like this flask of tea, and he loved cooking, so he made him like homemade cookies and things like that. Took it down and put a little note saying, if I've not made the tea right, let me know and I'll make it how you want it. And the homeless guy, wrote back to him and said how much it meant to him. And so little things like that. He used to do stuff like that all the time. He was so kind and thoughtful. And we all, as a family, we all knew his struggles with depression. He'd have these amazing positive times where he'd get so much done and be so social and amazing. And then he'd just completely shut down and not want any contact with people, turn his phone off, switch, like come off Facebook, come off Instagram, come off all the social media. Lockdown was really tough for him because to manage his depression, he did a lot of exercise. He needed to be physically at work, and lockdown stopped him from being physically at work. His clients that he counselled, he had to do from home, and he really struggled with that. He ended up moving back from his flat in Manchester back in with my mum and dad, and he told his manager that he was struggling a bit and needed to reduce his hours. But we'd got to a point with him where he'd not attempted suicide for quite a while. And we got to a point where we just thought he was managing it because he'd been through all these kind of low times and come back out again. And he was being really honest with my mum and dad, like telling them how low he was and stuff like that, but that he was managing it and things. But we just didn't know that he'd been planning it for a couple of months prior to actually doing it. And my mum and dad kind of went out to the shops that night. And then they came back and found him, and mum rang me and told me. And, you know, I've had that phone call a few times from her, obviously, because he's attempted before. And I just thought, oh, it's another one of these times where it's not, you know, he's not going to die. He's going to be fine. But then like 10 minutes later, I got the phone call saying that he had passed away. And it was horrific. I can't think of another word to describe it. It was absolutely horrific. You know, we're such a close family, very lucky for that. And it, you know, we're just heartbroken, and we're still heartbroken. It's 2 years on in June. It's heartbreaking. But in my personal opinion, I don't feel anybody really wants to take their own life, and I don't feel David really wanted to. He wrote us this note that said that he just couldn't live in his head anymore, but I feel that if he'd got the right help and the right support, he would still be here. And I just think people get to that point where they just think there isn't any hope for them and there isn't any way out, and that's why they do it. Whereas if people have got that bit of hope and have got those methods to deal with it, then there would be a reason for them to live and keep going, because David was an uncle, you know, to Evie. He was my brother, he was a son, he was, his friends set up a tribute page when he passed away, and there's like 450 people on there. Wow. All of whom he's touched their lives in some way. Yeah. He, in my opinion, I don't know if everybody believes this, but in my opinion, I don't believe anybody really 100% with the whole of their being wants to end their life. I just think they can't see a way out at that time, which is why I'm so passionate about trying to help people as much as possible to find that way out and have that hope to keep going. So, yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, man. Like, that's shows again an unbelievable strength that you've got to be able to talk about this and be as honest as you are being. So thank you, firstly. And I do hope that this, like I say, this talk does help a lot of people, maybe in similar circumstances, or even just people hearing this and gaining perspective on their own life, which I think is a massive one as well. I think that I've dealt with and worked with people over the last year in terms of mental health, and a couple of people have made it quite apparent how they have been treated and how people are treated on the more severe end when they kind of go into places, and the things that are done to them, which obviously I've not witnessed firsthand, but from the stories that I've been told, are pretty brutal and pretty astounding, really, to hear and to think that will be going on. Outside of that, with him obviously being within counselling and within helping people, do you think there was still a frustration from him with the system in terms of what he could do? Do you think that kind of helping people with their own mental health potentially was a trigger for him? If obviously you don't mind answering these questions, and if you do, please do say. Like, obviously you've expressed that you did try and commit suicide a few times. So where do you think the main triggers kind of came from with David, other than obviously things that have gone on earlier in his life that may have led to that? When he started to potentially receive help, is what I'm kind of getting at. What do you think kept pulling him back to states that he was in where he wanted to commit suicide?
I think it was lack of self-belief and self-worth. I don't think he realised how amazing he was. Well, he didn't. I know that he didn't, because we used to have quite deep conversations about it. You know, he always doubted himself. He was an overanalyzer. He used to, even though he loved his friends and loved us, not so much with us, but with his friends, he would analyse whether he'd upset anybody, whether he'd offended anybody, and it would literally, he'd spend a few hours overthinking stuff constantly about things. And I would say in that sense he did struggle a bit with social situations, because he would overanalyse and overthink whether he'd upset anybody, because he was the kindest person, and he would never have wanted to hurt anybody or upset anybody. We used to have conversations about relationships and stuff like that, and he'd always worry about if he'd been on a date with somebody that he didn't end up fancying them, that he didn't want to upset them, so he'd spend hours thinking about how he could tell them that he just wanted to be friends. And that used to kind of really screw him over a bit, his thought processes. And he was a big one for journaling. Okay. He did journal a lot down, but he tended to only journal down when he was in a negative state, not when he was in a positive state. So I think when he did look at his journals, all he saw was negativity, which I think was a massive thing, really. And one lesson that I've learned from that you have to, it's important, you do have to get your negativity down, obviously, but to journal the positives as well is so important. Yeah. And I think that's what he really struggled with. He never used to believe it when I'd say, "Oh, you're so lovely, you're so social, you've got all these bloody girls after you all the time. She's so attractive and all." But he just didn't believe it. He didn't believe it himself. And if you don't believe it yourself, then it's a difficult place to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, without that one, I think that hearing you say that kind of highlights, obviously, a lot of the work I do is helping people find belief, understand what belief is and how strong it is, and obviously things that I've experienced in terms of how powerful belief is on the body, and on on what you can achieve is phenomenal. Where do you think, and again, only if you're happy kind of talking about this, but where do you think this potentially kind of started to stem from? Were the signs of this, when you talk about him trying to commit suicide a few times, what was the early state, and were the signs up to that point, or was the first time quite a shock to the family in terms of, wow, this is, do you know what I mean? It's always going to be a wow, but sometimes there's signs leading up to it for the first one, or was it out of the blue? Where do you think triggers came? You talk a lot about kind of him over analyzing and overthinking. And I think sometimes when you're in a severe state of depression, the more you can overanalyze something, the worse it can get, if that makes sense, because you are kind of, you start to really conflict in the head and overthink situations and catastrophize them, and actually intelligence can be quite a negative thing in that scenario. But if we really pulled it back, do you feel that you can find things that you can relate to him going down this route, or is it still a bit of a mystery to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time that he did it was a massive shock to all of us. None of us had really had, well, sadly, actually, my mum's mum committed suicide when she was 15. But obviously my mum's kind of close to the age of 8 now. And at that time it was really taboo when somebody did that. But that was the only kind of experience we'd had, really. My auntie did struggle a bit with depression as well, but again, it wasn't really recognised then. So with David, we there were signs now. When you look back, like he used to sleep all day and be awake all night.
Well, yeah.
He used to kind of binge eat quite a bit, and then, you know, not eat for days. There were definite signs there, but none of us really clicked at that point that that it would be as severe as what it was. So the first time that he did attempt suicide was a massive shock to all of us. But I think from that, we're like I said before, we're a very close family, and we just wanted to kind of come together as much as possible and find ways to help him. So from that, and like mum and dad were very much like, we need you to be honest with us, David, because we can't leave the house or leave you on your own if you're not. You know, we need you to be honest and stuff like that. So from that he began to be more honest and open with us. Not fully, I don't think, but as much as he felt able. But yeah, the signs, I would say, were there now that I'm more aware of depression and what to look for. But at the time, I wasn't. So yeah, it was a massive shock the first time.
And in terms of kind of him growing up,
Yeah.
was there any major incidences that you feel could have led to this? Do you feel the environments he was in or the situations he was in could have stemmed it, or that's kind of where I was getting to the first time he attempted suicide. Leading up to that, had he been through anything that potentially could have caused this, or again, was that really just completely unknown? You saw David as potentially happy or just living life, and there's no significant thing that you could pin back to saying, yeah, there was this situation, or there were these people, or there was this thing. It was just he attempted suicide, and then became apparent that he wasn't in a stable mind.
There was nothing specific, no, because he, like I say, he was really popular at school. He had loads of friends. The only thing about his personality that I can pinpoint really is that he was a perfectionist. So
Okay.
everything that he did, he had to do to the best of his ability. Like he put a lot of pressure on himself. So he used to be quite a keen sports person. So at school he'd play football and do all those kind of things, and he'd always want to be the best. And then with his results and stuff like that at school, he'd always want to do the best that he could, and he put pressure on himself to do that. So that was probably the only kind of personality things, or the things that I can think of in his life that happened that could have led to that. So yeah, it wasn't like we had a tough childhood or anything that kind of led to him him feeling like that. I feel that maybe just, I don't know, people say like when you're depressed and stuff, it can be like a bit of a chemical imbalance in your brain or that kind of thing. I don't know enough about it to kind of comment on that, but there's nothing in our background or childhood or anything that I can pinpoint that would have made him feel like that. The only thing is his personality and his personality traits, that I can think, you know, the pressure that he put on himself and stuff like that, that maybe that's what led to him feeling low. And but I can't pinpoint anything else other than that, really.
And in terms of your mentality around mental health now, through what obviously you've been through and what's happened with David, what do you think needs to be made apparent around mental health and the way it's dealt with? I know there are a lot of organizations out there, and I know there are a lot of processes kind of like through the NHS or things like that. Where do you lie into, obviously you've shown your frustrations, like where do you lie in terms of now someone with mental health and the belief you've got in systems, or where do you feel there needs to be more support, or from your obviously experience within having this happen to someone within your family or brother, like what do you think that you would have liked to have seen more of, or where do you think help needs to be better?
Well, you know, I have the utmost respect for the NHS and the pressures that they're under and stuff like that, but it's not good enough to say to somebody that is at the point of taking their own lives, or even before that, you know, because we need to put the support in place before somebody gets to that point. But it's not good enough to say, oh, we've got a waiting list of 2 months, because, you know, somebody could, in that time, could end their lives. That to me isn't good enough. And there isn't enough support out there. I don't think, in terms of early intervention and things like that, and counselling that you get given on the NHS. Sadly, you tend to just get like 6 sessions, and then, because I know I've had it myself, yeah, 6 sessions, and then that's it. And by the time you've started actually opening up about your story and what's happened to you, your sessions are up, and that's it. And that's when you've waited a year plus sometimes for that counselling. Like I said before about Rubens, it falls a lot on charities, and we have some amazing charities out there, you know, in this country for mental health. I'm doing a skydive soon in April for my brother in memory of him, and it's for a charity called Andy's Man Club, and they don't have any waiting list. It's just dropping times all around the country for men who are struggling with their mental health. And that's what needs to be done. That support needs to be put in place now. You know, when somebody is reaching out and saying, I need help, I can't cope, I'm struggling, they can't wait for 2 months, a year. They need that support now. And thankfully, down to these amazing charities, which there are loads of, you know, people are getting that support that, in my opinion, should be provided by the NHS as well. But unfortunately, you know, it's not. And that's where the charities are amazing, and they're stepping in and providing that vital support that people need, because it needs to be done when somebody is saying, I need help.
Yeah. And I think where a lot of, and I agree with you, I think there's some unbelievable organisations and charities out there now. And I think that we talked about it today, that the unfortunate thing is most charities are created through a tragedy that's happened to someone, and they have felt the passion to start a charity to help the cause of what tragedy was, if that makes sense. I think where organizations then struggle is being able to, from my, and this is my perspective now, kind of jumping in the conversation, but I think that the charities then worry, and this is a barrier I faced when I want to help and coach people. But charities and organizations worry about obviously giving advice in case something does go wrong, and then the charity or organization gets blamed. So then they ultimately have a cap on how much support they can give, potentially other than an area or a community. Whereas it's then labelled onto the NHS to do something significant about it. And that's a tough thing, because from my perspective, it's like, well, I feel potentially I feel I can help people. But again, approaching organizations, it's like, well, we need this qualification, we need these people. And it's like, well, those people are in place at the minute, but obviously that structure and system isn't working. And I feel there's a real wall at the minute of that, because I think there are some amazing charities out there, but I think people do go to them, but because they are only able to offer a kind of a leveled surface of support, we are still seeing suicide at a high level, if we're quite honest. And I just feel it's because just talking is good, but sometimes it's not enough, unfortunately. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about, breaking the mold of. And I'm quite outspoken about that, and I'm quite strong in standing my ground with my theory on that as well. And I'm glad that obviously we're now hopefully going to be working together and approaching places and bringing this stuff in, because I think you talked a lot, and I think this is something that I want to kind of bring into place, which is we discussed it today as well, about understanding the mind. Because obviously every thought that we have comes through the mind, it comes through experiences and memories, and then new experiences, the people around, and all these kind of things start to form the mind. And you talked there before about kind of journaling and getting out of your head, because when these thoughts and are flying around in your head, and again, you've got different people speaking within your own head, and it can get quite overwhelming in who to listen to and what reaction and action to take from that. And I think the awareness of the mind and understanding what the mind is, and understanding, again, we touched upon understanding what emotions is. And again, this is not taught, we talked about this before, but it's not taught in schools. Me and Kev have had strong conversations about this as well. Like, if these aspects were taught, if a kid was shown in school how their mind works, and we're not talking about breaking the brain down, we're talking about thought processes here, negative and positive thoughts, things that literally dictate your behavior, and then emotions, what emotions are. If these things were taught in school, I personally believe that people would grow into life being able to handle life so much better. But because they don't understand how to deal with thought processes or what thoughts are, and they literally think thoughts control them and emotions then control them, this is when they get to the point that they feel out of control enough to take their life, if that makes sense. And I think that, again, that's why I'm so passionate about, firstly, self-development, because I think self-development for myself is helping someone develop. It's helping them find something and work on themselves to be a better person for them. And that brings a sense of positivity and a real sense of self-worth and compassion to the person. But then understanding the mind is how to focus on the thoughts that you want to have, and how to understand the thoughts that you don't want to have, that are still always going to be there, but understanding they're not actually you. And that for me is empowerment that could really transform lives and help save lives. But again, it's a barrier that I'm facing, and we're going to face at BeOne, in terms of being allowed to really help people with that. But I think we're both that passionate that we're going to try and break the mold. Where do you stand with kind of what I've just touched upon there, Christy?
Yeah, totally 100% agree with you. Like I say, I used to be a teacher. I used to work with 5 and 6-year-olds. And before I left, I had to leave, obviously, to become Evie's carer. But before I left, there was so much pressure on us as teachers to obviously teach the children how to read and write and the math skills and things like that, which is important, massively important, obviously. But before that, I worked in an inner city school in Manchester, a really deprived area. A lot of the children hadn't eaten a meal before they'd had their school dinner the day before, and they'd not had anything else to eat until they came into school for breakfast club that morning, then for the following morning. So they'd not had an evening meal. A lot of them had barely had any sleep, no clean clothes, no wash, nothing like that. And not because, the parents were bad parents. I'm not slating them. They were struggling.
Yeah.
Parents were struggling. But how can you expect a child to learn how to read and write and count and stuff like that if they haven't got their basic needs met. You can't. And I was so passionate about that as a teacher. I wanted to have time in the mornings to speak to the children and talk about how they were feeling and talk about their emotions and help them deal with that first before we started with the reading and the writing and the maths, because you've got to learn these life skills and well-being and looking after yourself to be able to learn and to be able to grow. And you can't do that if you're not, learning about yourself and expressing yourself. And it's one of the reasons that I struggle with education and the education system now, because there isn't enough focus on the well-being of the children. It is all about we need to get these results. And it's got its place. Obviously, they're important skills to have, but they shouldn't be the priority. The priority should be the well-being of the children and looking after them and giving them the ability to be able to express their emotions. And I think with the stuff with BeOne as well, I think it's important for people to kind of put these things in place before they get to that crisis situation of wanting to take their own lives or similar, having a breakdown, that kind of thing. We need to help people before they get to that point. People shouldn't have to get to that point. These things should be in place to help them before that, so that they don't ever get to that point, because it's a horrible point to be in. I felt very low in my life where, which sounds awful, with having got a daughter who I love, but particularly during lockdown, where I had feelings of I didn't want to be here anymore and stuff like that. I didn't ever go through with anything like that. But it shocked me enough to make me realise I need to do something about this. I don't want to feel like that anymore. I want to like myself. I want to feel like I've got a purpose and stuff like that. And there needs to be those tools out there, like with what you're doing, Ben, that can help people, before they get to that crisis situation.
And just to kind of touch on that, which is, I think that before we lead into kind of like the transition in terms of kind of self-worth and compassion and the work that you are literally doing to yourself now, which is really kind of transformed. And before that, I just want to highlight the mental strength that you have shown through life to obviously be in the position you are in now. And that's been quite phenomenal for me. And it's the perspective that I kind of want to shine. And I think that everything that you, on a day-to-day basis, the care you give your daughter is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think a lot of people just hearing the things that you do for her will be taken back. And it took me back, and it was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. The amount, not only that you do for your daughter, but the amount of pressure that's on you to care for it's not just you're looking, like literally her life in sometimes in a way is in your hands. And that's such a pressure to live with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that you've got to a stage now where you are coping with that in such an amazing way. And that just is such a testament to how mentally strong you are, to also then have to deal with what you went through with your brother. Again, highlights how mentally strong you are. These are real impactful things that have happened in your life that could have took you one way or the other. And I think to be standing as strong as you are before I even met you is absolute testament to yourself. And that shows the root of how strong you are, Christine. And then when we started to work together, the one thing that I wanted to zone in on quite quickly was self-worth, because I think you were giving so much to your daughter, which any parent would do, and obviously still dealing with what had happened to your brother, but there was a lack of love I felt kind of being given to yourself, and there was no real purpose in terms of you in your life, if that made sense. Now, just to kind of clarify that one, because obviously Evie is Christine's purpose, a child is purpose there, but as a coach, you need purpose for yourself in your life as well. And I think that's important. And I'd say that to any parent, to be the best parent you can be, the more purposeful you feel and content and fulfilled you feel with yourself, that's going to bring a more positive light around your children as well. And I think that's something that we've spoken about now in terms of the time you do have with Evie, the cuddle time and the rest time and the smile time and all these kind of things. It makes it more beautiful. And I think that what was the reach out to myself? What's the point that you came to where you felt you needed to do that?
Yeah, I think it was after David had passed away, and I was struggling with that, struggling with lockdown. Evie had to be off school for 2 years due to the COVID pandemic because she was so vulnerable. Because obviously with it being a respiratory condition, she has a lot of respiratory problems. So if she was to catch it, it could have been quite serious for her. So we had to keep her home from school. She was homeschooled for 2 years. She's gone back now, but yeah, she was homeschooled, but basically stuck. I live in a flat as well, stuck in a flat with not my own, garden. I had to make sure that the other residents weren't outside if I took Evie out in the fresh air. It was hard. It was really hard. My friends were amazing, as I say. They came to the window and we had conversations through the window and stuff like that. Brilliant support network. But there are times when Evie's in bed, I'm on my own, and you're on your own with your own thoughts, and it's horrible. It's a lonely place to be. And yeah, I do feel a bit ashamed to say it because of everything that happened with David, and obviously because I'm a mum, but I did have those thoughts of, I don't want to be here. Evie's dad's got a new partner, so I thought Evie would be well cared for. Obviously, she'd have her. All these negative thoughts going around in my head, thinking, that people will be all right. My friends will get over it. My family will find it hard, but I'm sure they'll get over it. And not with any definite intention that I would ever do anything to myself, but just these thoughts were kind of running through my head.
Yeah.
And it shocked me and scared me a lot that I was even thinking that way with everything that had gone on in my life. And so I saw a mutual friend had been to Kev at BeOne and done some cold water therapy with him. And she'd had a traumatic birth and with her son, and she'd said that it had really helped her. So I thought, I need to do something because I can't keep feeling like this. I can't keep feeling this low. I need to push myself and do something here. So I messaged Kev, who is amazing, and managed to get a last minute session with him. Went down there, did the breathing, went into the cold water. It was just phenomenal. The experience has changed my life. And it seems crazy to say that just from doing breathing and going into cold water, but it really did change my life. I released so much emotion that I've been holding on to. I'm not one for crying. I struggle with it. I don't like crying in front of people. I'd rather just plod on and keep myself busy, but I released it. Yeah. And I slept that night. Evie was with her dad. I'd slept that night for 10 hours, which I've done that for bloody years. Wow. Felt amazing. But then obviously it's a moment in time. Kev was brilliant. He kept in contact with me and gave me an MP3 to practice the breathing techniques. But it was a moment, and then I was back to my life again. And I did another session with him with two of my most amazing friends, and had a different kind of experience, not as much emotion release, but I was able to support them through it. Nice. And Kev as well. And had another amazing experience there. And then I obviously, I'm not tech savvy at all, but joined Instagram, followed Kev, and then saw that he was commenting on a few things connected with you. So I followed you and had a look at some of the things that you were doing, and I just thought, in the forefront of my mind was, I want to get fit, I want to get healthy, I want to look better, I want to feel better about myself, I want to lose weight, I want to, eat better. So I got in contact with yourself, and through doing those sessions with Kev, that kind of spurred me on to want to keep that feeling that I'd got of amazingness and feeling great about myself. I wanted to keep that feeling and continue, which is why I contacted yourself.
I love that, and I think what's really powerful there, Christine, and it's a message that I feel needs to be understood, which is so many people can go to a cold water therapy session or a breathwork session, and like you say, it is life transforming. It truly is. And Kev's transforming lives on a daily basis. He's a phenomenal man. But it's the continuation of something like that when you are away and then on your own. And again, that's something that's not within the coach's control. That's within the person's control. And I think that if you can take what you are going and experiencing, it can make you feel so euphoric, joyous, happy, positive in the moment, but then to come away and to lose track of the fact that you could continue to do that, but feel out of control that you can make yourself do that, or you could continue to do that, is somewhere where a lot of people fall short. So I think, again, that's a strong philosophy of mine, which is I help people take empowerment in terms of it's got to come from yourself to continue to act, to put in the work, to kind of transition the state of who you are, because I feel what comes with that is you feel empowered, because at the end of the day, you need to, as a person, feel that you can positively impact yourself, that you can positively make moves yourself, that you are in control of you, your thoughts, your actions, and what you do on a daily basis. And I think that that's, again, when I gave you the task when we first talked, that was in your hands. And for a lot of people, I don't hear back from them. And it's tough, but I've got to do that because I need that person to take control before they then take the step to come and work with me, because that accountability needs to stay there. And that's something that I learned from when I was a PT back in the day, which was a lot of the accountability is put onto the coach. But if the coach ever disappears and the person feels lost, and from my perspective, a coach should be trying to help that person learn and understand how to take control themselves. So when they do remove themselves, which I think as a coach you should be able to at a point, that person feels the strength to carry on. And that's something that obviously we've done, and you've shown real character and real strength in taking control to where you are now. And I think that one of the things that I just wanted to touch on was, how tough was it when we start to work upon, because obviously you've highlighted the reasons you came, but then I dug a little bit deeper and we started to try to find kind of different areas of visions of goals. So it wasn't just in one area, it was kind of, we did a perspective task to break down a lot of areas, if you like, but then we start to focus on multiple areas. There was a barrier at the start with obviously Evie, in terms of being a mum to Evie and then being Christine. And we touched upon that at the meeting today. And I think what you said was really powerful there. But I think that, where was your thought process there? Like, what was the main struggles there? Because as a coach, I don't know what was going through your mind at that point. I was only trying to coach you to help you see where I was trying to get you to. And it was a tough decision for me to make there, in terms of saying that to you, because at the end of the day, I knew your situation. And it could have took you one way or the other. But when I started to try to show you that there was a light for you, Christine, to have positive focuses and things to look forward to in life and things to chase and goals to have for you just individually, how, just explain the kind of the resistance you had of thinking, wow, I've got Evie here, how can I have aspirations and goals and visions? Because there was that resistance, which I think anyone would have, but thankfully you understood the power of that, because by finding that, obviously you will be a better person to Evie as it was. Where were you when I started to kind of take you on that journey?
Yeah, I think it was the parent guilt that I think a lot of us as parents face. The guilt of doing something for myself when all of my time but prior to that was taken up with Evie, and making sure that my focus was on her and being the best mum that I could be for her. But the realization I came to, and I guess that's probably why I felt a bit of overwhelm, which I've told you quite a bit at the beginning. I was like, I can't do this. I haven't got the time. I can't fit this in. I've got too much to do with Evie. I just feel like all the tasks that I was doing and stuff, I didn't make the time or I didn't feel I had the time to do it until I really kind of got into it more and realised actually I'm spending 2 hours watching crap on TV when I could turn the TV off and have that time to work on myself, or I'm just scrolling through Facebook or Google or, you know, looking at random stuff when I could be, you know, working on myself. But definitely the mum guilt played a big factor. I was like, I don't feel like I can focus on myself. I should be focusing on Evie. But then actually I came to the realisation of to be the best mum that I can be for Evie, I need to be the best person I can be for myself. And I need to love myself, or at least like myself, and be Christine as well as Evie's mum. I think I said today when we've been in hospital before, you get called mum or dad. Don't get called by your name. You're just mum or dad, which I'm so proud to be Evie's mum. You know, I'm the proudest I could be to be a mum, and I love being a mum with all my heart. But I am also Christine. I am also a person, as well as being Evie's mum. I am me too, and I've come to the realisation now that I am, and that I deserve to have nice time away from Evie and not feel that guilt for that, because it makes me a better mum. You know, I felt like I was a good mum before, but I'm an even better mum now because I work on myself and feel much better about myself than I ever did. So that makes me a better parent to Evie. And makes me value my time with her so much more because my mind is focused on her, not on all the other things that I've got to do.
And I feel like a couple of things there, like a key one is like you talked about their value in your time when you're with Evie, because you're in so much more control of your thoughts. Control, it's where thoughts were overwhelming you before. You start to be able to be more present with Evie. But I think another one that I just want to touch on there is like you talked about time away from Evie, but I think like because of the circumstance you're in, but then if you look at parents in another scenario, they would go out on a night out and leave their kid or child with someone else, and that guilt wouldn't be there. And but then again, do you know what I mean? It's redefining and refining that perspective, and I think that that is absolutely fine to do. It was a pressure that you were putting on yourself, and that showed so much character and strength from yourself to make that decision. And again, that couldn't have come from myself, it could only come from you, but you took that decision, and then from that you've not only grown strength and belief in yourself and compassion, and I know you flicker between love and like for yourself, but I know it's growing towards love, but at the same, do you know what I mean? So you are developing at this time with self-worth and belief, and you are starting to find these fires and lights, and you're making such progression in yourself with your fitness and your health, which was, like you said, the main goal you came. But at the same time, you're finding the worth, you're finding that you've got bucket lists that you're ticking off. We're creating one for each month, but also you are now in a better mental space around your daughter. And you spend so much time with your daughter, and you take her to so many places, you do so much with her. From my perspective, again, this is where I talk about how the impact you've had on my life. I just see a phenomenal mum and a phenomenal lady really capitalizing on everything and making the most out of life, and it kind of that really ups my game. And I talk about this so much. I take inspiration off anyone I can, and that inspires me on a daily basis. And that's not me saying that for the sake of it. It truly does. And I think that it's the development. And again, it's like we've been on a journey together over the last fair few months, and it's just it's empowering to see where you're at. But the most empowering thing is to see that the belief you have in what we do, if that makes sense. For you now to come on board with BeOne and want to help push BeOne forward to help people, because you know the strength and power, not just that you know strength and power behind it, but you believe in the theory behind it. You believe in this helping people find themselves, basically. They become one with themselves, which we talked about the name today. And there's nothing more there's been nothing more proud than me to see that transition, and then to have you become a part of this. In terms of in terms of that, in that decision to become a part of this and know that you're going to be kind of pushing BeOne forward as two organisations and charities, where did that sit with you?
So I'll be completely honest. When you first asked me, I always get that self-doubt. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. Who's going to want to listen to me, and blah, 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 all that self-doubt and negativity that we all have. But I can, I've said this to you, but doing this course and meeting yourself and meeting Kev, and that has saved my life. It really has, and it's no exaggeration to say that it really has. It's made me so much more empowered. I feel so much more in control of my life. Before, I felt very overwhelmed, very out of control, even though I am skilled in looking after Evie and I know everything that she needs. All other aspects of my life I felt very overwhelmed by and not in control of. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of low self-esteem. Whereas, obviously I'm human. I still get those feelings. I still look in the mirror and not necessarily like what I see, but it's not as often as what it was before. I put a post out recently, I think it was on Valentine's Day, saying that it's the first Valentine's Day that I felt like really positive, because I'm actually like myself now, which I never thought I'd say. And to feel like that feels amazing. And I want other people to feel like that as well. So if I, no matter what self-doubt I have about whether people would listen to me or get anything from what I'm saying, I want to try. I want to help people as much as possible, because I don't want people to feel how my brother did. I don't want people to feel how I have done. I want people to feel good about themselves, because people have got so much to offer, and people shouldn't feel that they haven't got a place in this world. We all have a place in this world, and we all have so much to offer. We just need those opportunities to do that, and we need those people to listen to us and help us and support us and give us that hope. And if I can do that just for one person by being involved with you, then amazing.
What you just said there is so powerful. I'm hoping Liam's going to be able to cut that, because I think that to have that is, when you listen back to that, Christine, I think you'll smile at how powerful that sounds, and I think that you will have, and you have had a bigger influence on a hell of a lot of people, especially a lot of people that I've been involved with that have started to get to know you. And I think the impact is already apparent that you're having on people's lives, just through who you are, your character, the things you've been through, the things you still on a daily basis stand strong in being, and what you stand for, the message you have. All of these things, Christine, is absolutely phenomenal. It's why I wanted you on the show tonight, but it's also why I'm so proud to have you working with BeOne and to be moving forward. And I think it's because I believe that you truly do want to help people. And I think it's because, like you just said there, there's good in everyone. There's opportunity out there. It's just helping people find that worth, find that belief, and then in helping them take empowerment. I think that's the biggest one. And again, you've taken that, and you're shining it in a minute phenomenally. Like you say, the Valentine's post blew a lot of people away, I think, but also the amount you start to do, you hit a 3-mile run, and we've not even touched on the injury you had to your ankle, where you've got metal throughout your ankle and you're still battling that, and you just, honestly, you're an absolute phenomenal lady, Christine, in many ways. And I think that the mental strength you showed up to the point we start to work on focusing that into specific areas was that strong that now I feel you are unstoppable. And I'm looking forward to seeing you progress on your journey. And I'm looking forward to obviously seeing where we progress as a partnership with Liam in terms of pushing BeOne forward to hopefully help people that are in circumstances that need help. And again, that might not just be in terms of mental health or in terms of like children's charities like Reuben's, but also just helping people find focus and know that they can go and achieve whatever's out there. I think we're both a big believer in, well, we both know that belief is a strong thing through our own circumstances, but it's helping someone understand that if they believe in themselves, anything is possible.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's got, that belief is so important. It really is. And so many people don't have that. So if we can help people to have that, it's an amazing thing.
It is. You're a star, right, Christine? We're gonna wrap up there, but I want to say again a couple of things. Firstly, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you were a little bit nervous before you came on, but secondly, just for being so honest. I think that it takes a lot to be as honest and open as you are, but to do that is going to help so many people. I think it's untrue, and I know there are a lot of people that don't feel comfortable enough to share their story, that have been through similar or worse or whatever it may be. And I think I completely support that. But for the people that do come forward, I've got utmost respect for, because you're helping people that are in those circumstances. But I think, like I've said, you also help other people gain perspective, gratitude, humbleness for what they are and for what they've got, and for life itself, and just being here and being able to make the best of any opportunity they get. So I just can't thank you enough for coming on. And again, I look forward to kind of working with you and moving on as we go forward.
Definitely, yeah. My pleasure.
Thank you. I'm just going to drop you back and I'll speak to you in a second.
Okay.
Cheers, Christine. Thank you. Yes, guys. So episode number 4 with Christine. And I knew that was going to be obviously deep tonight. And even I, hearing some stuff that I know that Christine's been through, was hard hitting just to sit here and listen to that then, and to try and show the respect. And I obviously wanted to ask questions to gain, to help gain more perspective, because I think perspective is a massive thing in life. And again, that's why I am such a big believer in being so open-minded. You never know what someone's been through. Someone can say something, someone can act in a certain way to yourself, and you judge them very quickly, but you truly don't know what's going on in someone's head. You don't know what they've been through. And I think having a bit of open-mindedness and taking a step back, but also at times when you're feeling quite low, or you feel your circumstances and you've got the back up against the wall, again, understanding what other people are going through can help you transition that state quite quickly. But also just the want to help people, which is very apparent listening to Christine. She could be very resentful of a lot of things that are going on in her life, but she isn't resentful. Her outlook is to help others, and to be the best she can be, for her daughter, for herself. And she's just an absolutely phenomenal lady. And I'm not joking, the impact she's had, I've posted it twice, but I truly mean it. Like, the impact she's had on me in the last 4 or 5 months has been incredible, both for myself and some reflection for me, obviously for my son Jax, and to be the best I can be as a parent, and to show love and be present with him, and also the power of what BeOne is all about. And the name BeOne, for anyone that's not heard it before, is about becoming happy with who you are. Because I never was. I always resented myself. I hated myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I acted. I hated the way I always got in trouble, or things always happened to me. And I had such an angry and resentful and hateful look of the world and myself. I hated myself. I was at war with myself. And it wasn't until I became one with myself and actually decided to like myself and be happy with who I was and how I looked, that my life completely transformed. And it was the point that I became one with myself that things started to happen. Opportunity came, more people that were positive came into my life, and I started to build the life that I've got now, which I'm truly thankful for. And I'm still ambitious and chasing things, but it doesn't mean I'm grateful, and I couldn't stop right now and just be humble and blessed for what I've got. And I think that's a powerful thing. So guys, I hope this episode has been impactful to yourselves. Like I say, there's such a mixed variety of people coming on, and the idea again is just to show different walks of life, how different people operate, the things different people have been through, the different perspectives people have, and again, understanding people's mindset. And Christine's mindset up to me meeting her has been phenomenal. To go through what Christine's been through and to still stand strong is just absolutely next level. But then to understand now she's working on self-development and mindset towards goals and ambitions in her own life, to have that strength of mind from what she's been through, to then channel that into what she wants to achieve. I truly believe she's unstoppable, and I can't wait to see what Christine achieves in life. And I'm excited to be working with her for BeOne. Guys, as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Please click the like button if this has been something that you've taken something from. And again, guys, if you aren't subscribed, please click the subscribe button. And obviously you'll get updates of the live shows and also additional content myself and Liam will be dropping onto the channel. So guys, thank you for joining in as always. Much love, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.